Well, good morning, everybody. I want to start off again with some satellite data here. We're going to start in Texas today because last night, as this weak boundary slid to the south across the panhandle here, it did initiate, as you can see right there, some pretty large storms, some of which produced some strong straight line winds and also some hail. Isolated but deep in terms of convection here. I got asked a couple of weeks ago, why do I always start off with satellite data? And I just want to remind everybody, for most of my professional career and going back to when I was in school, we just didn't have access to this. This is a relatively newer thing for us, even though it's been now a few years that we've had GOES 16. To be able to get a 5-minute update on satellite data at 1 kilometer resolution, it's just amazing. So you find a lot of us meteorologists that have been around a while, we just stare at this stuff because we didn't see it for most of our careers. We get to see other neat things too, like notice the storms that popped off right here as the atmosphere reached its convective temperature and just blew up this storm. It made a nice little outflow boundary of around it where the downdraft kind of clears the air out. And as that storm moved forward, its anvil just spread out, miles and miles ahead of it. Just neat to see that. And then you can see where the moist air is. In fact, what was really neat just before the sunset last night is to look at all of the waves in this. These are all gravity waves. Essentially, your gravity is your restoring force as the atmosphere kind of bounces through this stable layer in this region. Just amazing to see all of that. So it's fun. Stabilized air here and very unstable air in a few pockets here on the back side. And the other thing I could see is the turn of the winds, and you can see that in the smoke that is over parts of Louisiana. So these are prescribed burns, and now you can see those smoke plumes moving from the south to the north, which is a bit of a switch over what we saw earlier in this week with our wind direction. And that's going to be really important with the setup of this next system that's going to be coming through, our next several systems coming through. So this morning I am in Charlottesville, Virginia, and pretty excited to be here to speak with a group this morning, but the sun was just rising. Deep low off the coast here, but just go back again yesterday. Here's the low that was moving through the Great Lakes. It's a bit disorganized. It's got this broader front that it's leaving hanging into this area. Some chilly air behind this early this morning, but that is going to be shifting around in a big way as we progress through the next 5 to 7 days as a multi-day severe weather event sets up in the midsection of the United States. Overall, our narrative hasn't changed too much. Can you see if I kind of rock back and forth here yesterday, look at the flow coming out of the west. That is flow coming largely out of the southwest. And every time we kind of set up and spring southwest flow, it just gives us this risk of severe weather coming off the Rocky Mountains. But the narrative that has not changed has been the location of the heavy rains and also where we're expecting to see the severe storms. So just got a new image in here. It's probably just a hair past 6 a.m. right now as I'm recording this East Coast time. Central time, excuse me, and we're just watching here the sunrise. Okay, so let's see if this updated. Still through the 5 a.m. We just must have hit 6 a.m. right as I started. Here's the rainfall from yesterday, and I bring this up just to illustrate there's places here in the eastern Corn Belt that need to get a good stretch of dry weather. Moisture recovery has been good as of late, and we need to get some drier conditions back into place in order for planting to occur. Plus, we got to get these temperatures up a bit. Some of the rainfall you see down here in the southeast, this again over the last 3 days, this is kind of our last chances for rain in a while. We're looking at a bit of a drier pattern. Bigger picture though, let's take a look at the month of April, month to date. And again, you can see those areas that got the precipitation yesterday are also areas that have been exceptionally wet and need a long break. But we are anticipating very heavy rains to come into this area over the next 7 to 10 days. How far back to the west those rains get will be critical for parts of Kansas. I did get an interesting comment on YouTube that I very much appreciated yesterday, and that was while the hydrology of the area needs the water, and the timing of this can be problematic, right? And the reason for that is we also need to get a crop established here, and we need to make sure that seed as it sits in the ground and then emerges comes out under the best conditions. And too wet is a problem, and too dry is a problem. And there's a sweet spot, and we're about to dump in this area potentially several inches of rainfall. But I'll show you the forecast in a few moments. But I want to just note again how dry we are in this part of the western and high plains and central plains of the United States. And even though you see these numbers on the wetter side of the distribution here over the last 132 years, this has been dried out considerably by some strong winds and warmer temperatures. It also points out here in parts of Virginia, getting into Delaware, sections of Maryland and North Carolina, that drier area that's been hit over the last few weeks. And you can also see it down here in Florida. A little bit farther to the north and west, we're about to add quite a bit more precipitation into this area given the position of these troughs. So especially along the coast of Washington, Oregon, we're going to see these numbers come back up to the higher side of this distribution. So soil moisture, this is only the top 4 inches. So again, we're looking for those areas that have had too much rain or not enough. And again, we just kind of see the strong contrast, western Corn Belt versus eastern here with the moisture set up this go of it. All right, early this morning, we had, in fact, let's get an update on this. There it is. There's the 6 a.m. data, and we've got still frost and freeze issues going on here as the cold air comes in behind that low. We have dense fog down here where the Ohio meets the Mississippi, and then coming out of New Mexico into western Texas, red flag warnings, high wind advisories, and you're going to see later today the risk of severe storms into this region. Also some strong winds in Southern California. And that's largely due to the position of these upper level troughs. Here's the one to the north, here's the one to the south. This is a part of a broader trough system that's here, aided in its southwest position by this ridge that's sitting off the west coast of Mexico. And every time we get flow like this in spring, just to make this statement again, this reinvigorates the opening of the Gulf of Mexico, the colder, drier air aloft, and that gives us the wind shear profile combined with the near surface instability that allows for the atmosphere just to pop. And we're going to have to watch to see where that's going to happen. So today, this is where we've got our risk. It's going to be primarily in this part of Texas again. So the slight risk out there. As we move into tomorrow, the Storm Prediction Center is enlarged to an area of enhanced risk. And once again, the streaky nature of these storms as they kind of blow up in the afternoon heat will be critical to see who gets the rain, but the likelihood of tornadoes and straight line wind damage and hail has been increased in this area as well. From there, let's go on out to day 3, which will be the 26th. This broadly opens up farther to the west, to the east, now hitting Iowa over to the Mississippi River and all the way back down to the Red River Valley of the south. But you'll notice that as we go beyond day 3 out into day 4, it's now kind of resetting itself back up here on Saturday as the next wave digs in behind this and sets up another event down here in parts of Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. Could stretch this one out farther to the north as well. And by day 5, so this would be now Sunday, we're now keeping an eye out on that same region, the Red River toward the Mississippi River. What is noticeable about this pattern is, again, because the troughs are coming in and doing something like this, all right, we're not digging these systems through the country, delivering rainfall into the east or southeast overall. So this is going to be an area that's going to be drier and staying away from a lot of this precipitation. So let's get a good look at the high-res NAM to get things started. Scattered rain throughout much of the kind of east and northeast today, excluding the southeast here. The front clears by later this afternoon out of Virginia and North Carolina. Excuse me. And then what our attention is going to turn to late tonight, late tonight is going to be what happens right down here into Texas. So you'll notice if there's severe weather, it could be really late. It's not well resolved by the models right now. So we'll have to be watching the late afternoon heat to see what comes out in Texas because, again, the high-res NAM is not getting it. We do continue to see the risk of some heavy rains into midday Thursday here. Again, backside of the high-pressure cell, new low emerging, deeper low, the broader trough coming into the northwest. So there's that rain for parts of Oregon, Washington, some very high elevation snow here in the Cascades. And then the whole setup takes the turn. This is Thursday night. There it is. That's the first low, just the first one here coming out. Now, I wouldn't look at this low and expect to just get widespread rain coverage in this area. It's not going to be developing in that particular way. This is going to be spotty, even though it's got that classic look, big comma, head on this low. This is not a wintertime system, so this isn't rain for everybody, but it will be spreading through this area, and that is just the beginning. So by the time we get out there to midday Friday, we're talking snow along the spine of the Rockies. We're talking, snow in the Cascades. The broader trough is still living over the west. And following this system, the whole next 7 days in total, the European Artificial Intelligence Forecasting System has still pinned down this region for the heaviest rainfall. So the lows enter the northwest, hence the heavy precipitation here. Some more snow in the Rockies. Systems come out. Colorado desperately needs to get some of the wraparound from this, given how dry things have been. I know we've had snow here. There's been some moisture, but we need more. And a big question for me will be, how far to the west is this moisture actually going to make it? We're drier in the southeast, drier into Montana, parts of the Canadian Prairie, and then drier in the southwest as well. The MBM maybe shows a little bit more relief in this. And you look at the precipitation. And what I mean by relief is contrast. Let me rephrase that. And again, it shows the heavier corridors, though, lined up in the same spots. Let's go now to the European model. So this is its latest update for the next 7 days. And finally, the GFS. So again, that's 4 models real quick here. Whoops, sorry. That is the AIFS. There's the MBM. Here is the European. And here is the GFS. So by the way, in the new redesign of AgWeather, we're going to have these all stacked up so you can glance at them very, very quickly to compare the models. And hopefully that's going to offer just a new way to kind of more fast, in a fast way, assess it, plus all new regional maps. I worked on this for 5 hours on the plane yesterday. I'm pretty excited to give this to you later on. Hopefully later on, this spring you'll have it in your hands. Okay, I'm going to show you next some probability maps because these are pretty amazing. This is just through the next 10 days, looking at the chance of getting an inch of total precipitation. And if we step this up to 2 inches, we're just honing in on that area that's going to get a lot of moisture. Now we need, with the timing of planting in this part of the country, wanting the moisture, needing the moisture versus getting it in a timely fashion is always a concern. And I always default to get the moisture in for the hydrologic aspect of, I'm going to want this water in the soil for later. And so I think about that and what's coming through here, but it is going to throw the brakes on in a big way any early planting through the very early parts of May. But that's your chance at getting over 2 inches of rain here in the next 10 days. So several systems ejecting. On the drier side of it, this is the probability of staying under a ½ inch. And again, there's these areas that I continue to stay concerned about. Now the southeast, except for parts of Virginia, North Carolina, where it has been drier, we could afford a 10-day time period where we're on the drier side of it. But I don't want to see big southeast ridging building itself in early and staying there, just simply for the risk of there being drought development in spring in this area after what has been a winter that completely undid drought and went over to the side of flooding throughout much of this winter and spring timeframe across these regions. From here, let's go take a look at model performance. Just to make this clear, the artificial intelligence, that's the black line here, continues to dominate overall with its skill score, outperforming both the GFS, which is in red, and the European operational, which is in blue. And lately, while the GFS and the Euro took a dip, it is important to note that the AIFS has still been kind of on top here in terms of its performance. So if you don't mind, I'm going to use it only today, looking at the trough ridge pattern. So here are the 2 troughs that come together. This will be by Friday. So this again is our Friday severe threat in through this area. And then you'll see the deeper trough come through Saturday. That's the second one. And then that one lifts right up toward Wisconsin. And here's the next low coming into the northwest. And it dives down, broad area of very warm conditions opening up here in early May. But anytime we get, again, what I'm going to tell you, anytime that flow sets up like this is going to be a setup for early spring storm systems. And while the artificial intelligence system has taken this trough and is no longer tossing it right out over parts of Nebraska by May the 4th, it doesn't necessarily slow down on the idea here of getting these subtle little shortwaves coming off of the mountains to erupt into storm systems here. But what I am going to tell you about this upcoming pattern as we start to build it out into week 2, we're no longer getting the really strong signals of the deep troughs making it over the mountains. And maybe some of the reason for that is that we keep getting things quite highly amplified, see this, on either coast. So this is more north-south flow in the jet stream rather than west to east, which may start to slow down some of the progression of the storm systems as we work our way into May. And why that's important is to slow these things down means we'll start to find planting windows in the midsection of the country. I do want to bring up one thing, and this is not, these aren't alarm bells going off in my head right now, but around May 7th, 8th, and 9th, we are, I've told you this in the past, we're in La La Land with the models. I'm just curious if La La Land is changing with the artificial intelligence when you combine it with the ensemble. But let's imagine we do end up bringing in this highly amplified ridge into this area. It'll be important to note if that trough gets any deeper than it currently is. And the reason why I stress this is because if you remember, we talked earlier this week about the risk of where we could get late season frosts. It depends. If you're in the east of the Rocky Mountains, it all depends on the depths of troughs in this area. At this stage, I'm not worried about it. For Ontario and Quebec, sure, but this isn't abnormal for this time of year in these areas, getting over toward the Canadian Maritime. If this trough continues to show up and gets deeper, then I think we have something to talk about in terms of some cold air coming into the northeastern part of the United States and maybe the Great Lakes around May 7th, 8th, 9th. But right now, it is just kind of a phantom here in the models we need to pay attention to. Okay, so let's compare operational runs of the GFS and the European. And we've already seen through Thursday. There we go. This is when the storms begin to erupt on Thursday night. Keep an eye right in through here on Thursday night. As we then play forward throughout the day on Friday, that low moves out. It loses its upper level support as it moves toward the upper Midwest. The next broad trough, which just came through the Northwest, is now sitting over the Rockies. So this is Saturday morning. As we then get into Saturday night, next low emerges. Severe weather risk hits this same area again here. From there, that low pulls out and moves its way toward, again, the same area. High pressure protects the southeast, but then high pressure also pumps the moisture into this frontal boundary, giving us the risk on Sunday night right in through this corridor for the strong to severe storms. After that, we have another trough that comes into the northwest, but that's the one we're going to be watching carefully. Does that trough get over the mountains and start to eject? And when you get out here this far, we're next Thursday, Friday. I don't think the models are in very good agreement about the pattern. I mean, take note, the GFS is dumping a bunch of rain over Missouri, Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, southern Minnesota. Nothing here in the Euro. So we got to be very careful at taking these models out past about day 7, given the activity in this pattern and the uncertainty in the pattern. So what we're going to do is we're going to flip this over and look at a couple of different things. I want to make sure you all know about this website I built. I tried to distill a bunch of my favorite maps down into just one spot. So if you go to ag-wx.com and type in national_report.html, you can see kind of just my favorites. They're all just kind of stacked up here. You can use the sidebar to get around. But I did want to show you the GFS versus the European on snow, and let you know that both models are trying to bring in a little bit of the white stuff in through here. Very low chances, but we need to talk about it just because it's there, and you can see the better snows coming through the spine of the Rockies. Slide up, you can get the week 2 outlook. And what's interesting to me about this week 2, look at that. I didn't notice this. The WPC's back online. Thank God. I've been waiting for a long time. We now have 5 models to compare. That's the 7-day forecast from the WPC. They must have gotten this fixed. Sorry, I woke up here in Charlottesville. I didn't have a chance to go through my normal kind of cadence of checking everything. So really good news that that's back online. So again, reinforcing the same ideas on where the heavy precipitation is going to be. Okay, now back to this. In week 2, if you look at the CPC versus the European versus the GFS, it is important to note that there still seems to be activity like this. Got it? And troughs, I think, coming into the northwest in all 3 models. Drier, mid-south, southeast, could that be the case? It seems like it's going to stick around for that first week of May, and that's actually what's represented here. This is the first week of May. Question is, what are the temperatures going to be doing, and is this at risk of getting stuck? That's what I'm really quite curious about. So by the way, if you keep scrolling down here, you can see all sorts of other temperature data, including the new outlook from the WPC, CPC. Got all their hazards maps. It's all just here for you to consume in a quicker way, I hope. New version of this will be very mobile friendly as well. This is not. I built this kind of using 1990s HTML. The newer stuff is going to be a lot better. Okay, let's talk about those temperatures. Frost risk over the next 7 days. I'll show you the timing of this frost, but take a look at how we're breaking things up here in the west and starts to see some much warmer conditions coming up out of the southern plains. Min temperatures look something like this. Here's today. We already saw this. That's tomorrow. So there's the end of that cold stretch getting through New England on Friday. Major warm up in the midsection of the country ahead of the severe weather events late this week. This is Saturday morning's lows, getting into Sunday and Monday. Another shot at some cold air, though, coming in on Sunday morning and Monday morning here in the northern plains as the system exits. The next two go through as they exit. So we'll keep an eye on that. From here, take a look at today's highs. There's Thursday into Friday and Saturday. So see the cold air coming behind that low? West is quite cold again. Sunday, very cold up in this area. This is when we have this potential for some snow to get in here, sneaking in the overnight hours, Saturday, Sunday. And then we'll play this forward on into Monday. Cooler air wraps through the Great Lakes and Northeast, and by Tuesday, we've really warmed this thing up. The day 5 through 10, the GFS has come back into agreement with the European on the warmer conditions for a broad section of the U.S. Broader troughs lingering off the northwest continues to keep that area cold as we finish this month. But starting into the month of May, this is what we see. This is day 10 through 15, getting us out there to the end of that first full week of May. Overall, warmer conditions still being forecast, and that echoes what the European is suggesting. Cooler west, much warmer for the rest of the country. And if we slide this out to day 10 through 15, that's the picture we end up seeing. I do want to point out one thing. The MJO seems to be moving. The trade winds have completely lost their El Nino signal, and now we're moving toward a bit of a time period where, because of the lack of a strong tropical connection, we are not seeing predictability being very high beyond the next maybe 10 to 15 days. But should the MJO pop out into phase 4 to finish April and to start May historically, that leads to troughs in the west, which we've seen in the models, and ridging in the southeast, which we're experiencing right now. So you could very much say that we are in like a MJO phase 4 type setup, given that the El Nino signal is pretty much gone. So that brings me to the models, and this is what the newest European model is suggesting that May is going to look like. In terms of precipitation, I think it's hung up on having troughs here and weak lows ejecting, and that's why it's got this whole area under the chance of having above normal precipitation. You know what I'm going to draw a question mark on. It's going to be this area. Given the dryness that needs to be overcome in that area, it's hard to see the models breaking away from it. But should these next 10 days prove me wrong, then this could make sense. Also take note of this, the drier signal that's now shown up here. I don't want you to see this as completely dry. I just want you to see this as the chances for more normal spring-like thunderstorms, which are hit or miss by their very nature, are coming through this area. But we could start to open up planting windows once we get past this pattern we're in for the next 10 to 12 days overall. And what's interesting about this pattern is it looks quite similar to the analogs. So note that area was, historically, when you look at all those years that had El Nino in winter, that had faded and was gone by spring, and La Nina by summer, we did have windows that opened up in this region in the month of May. What I don't agree with is the temperature pattern. I don't think we keep the pattern quite like what you see in terms of the temperature anomalies over here on the left. So we'll keep a close eye on this. Still building some new long-range information for you. I just needed to step back from a few days so I don't, fall into that trap of conflating ideas or confirming biases that I've had in my head lately. Just want to stop and get a fresher look. So we'll come back to that either on Friday or Monday in my next forecast video. So here's what we need to get into, some global stuff. As we talked about yesterday, the next 7 days or so looking very, very warm for parts of Brazil's Safrinha growing areas. And I'm going to slide up here and show you the latest 10-day probability graphic. Very wet down in Rio Grande do Sul, Santa Catarina, maybe Paraná, but storms along the Paraná River, which runs right in through here. But this area in through here needs to be watched given how dry it is in that area. So hopefully this will load quickly. I should have this preloaded for you. Sorry. I'm at the Boar's Head Resort. Beautiful resort, terrible internet. So there we go. It's loading. And you can see that overall, as we play through the next 7 days or so, if this will continue to load for me here, we'll see that this area is drier. One of the new things, by the way, that I've made with this new stuff I'm working on for you is the image size has been cut more than in half, meaning that these will load quicker for us that don't have high-speed internet. But right there, that's what I'll keep an eye on. Okay, globally, a couple of things to point out. You've probably heard lately about some of the issues with the Russian wheat crop. Um, in the near term, wetter in this area overall. This is the Black Sea, Ukraine, Russian wheat belt, but drier right down here in the southern part of it. Keep an eye right on that area. Also, it's been extremely wet into this corridor, and it's expected to stay that way. You can see, this is where we had the flooding earlier this month in Dubai. Continues to be extremely wet here. And also take a look at China. Now, the Manchurian Plain, the North China Plain, these are major productive areas, but so is this part of China south of the Yangtze. Very, very wet in the forecast, as is most of Indonesia. The reason why I bring all this up is because if you look lately, we've been extremely wet here. I know it's a different projection, but south of the Yangtze River, extremely wet. This is the really wet corridor that goes over toward Dubai, but it's also these other countries that surround it in this area. And the map you're looking at, by the way, is a 30-day precipitation anomaly figure. So we're just trying to hone in on these different areas. Let's flatten this back out and look at one last thing. The May, June, and July seasonal forecast from the Columbia University's IRI multi-model probability keeps those same areas wet. Take note of this, how wet Indonesia is, and you can see right in through here the wetter conditions being forecast, while the Safrinha crop likely has a very dry finish as we start to move toward its harvest in June. So just an important, I think, bit to finish on here. We'll continue to reconstruct these longer range ideas and see what we come up with. So I appreciate your attention, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.